Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this Monday afternoon, and there were a lot of playoff games that went down over the weekend, and we already have a team that just got eliminated in the first round. Phoenix has just become the first team to get eliminated from the postseason. This happened yesterday night after this was the last game to be played, and this is going to be the first segment of the show, along with the Lakers game against the Denver Nuggets, where we talk about how the Lakers were able to avoid getting swept and were able to live for another game. Then in the second series, we are going to be talking about the Clippers and the Magic being able to tie the series back up again, making the series 2-2. And then in the third segment, we're going to talk about the Pacers and the Knicks going up 3-1 in their respective series. And then we have the special fourth segment where it's really just going to be OKC going up 3-0 against the Pelicans, as well as the Celtics going up 2-1 against the Miami Heat. So just a playoff recap of all the games that happened over the weekend, as well as like some of the big stories about these games. But before I begin with the first segment, I'd like to remind everybody to please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. It is gsmcspodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcspodcast.net. And we can go right ahead and talk about the first segment, which is going to be the Timberwolves going up against the Phoenix Suns. So they played on Friday, and on Friday they ended up going up 3-0 in the series. And I couldn't cover that game because obviously it happened relatively late at night, and I do the podcast at 12, so I did it before this game. But they ended up taking the series 3-0, and Ant scored 36 points in Game 3. Rudy Gobert had 19 points and 14 rebounds. Mike Conley had 15. Karl-Anthony Towns had 18 and 13. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker had 16 points. And Naz Reid had 13. Now for Phoenix side, Bradley Beal ended with 28. Kevin Durant ended with 25. Devin Booker ended with 23. And that was basically the only scoring options that were available for the Phoenix Suns. It didn't help that not all of them shot really efficiently either. Kevin Durant shot 8 for 18 in Game 3, and Bradley Beal shot 10 for 19 in Game 3. Again, it wasn't really that bad, but again, they could really use a little bit more efficiency. And then their last game that they played was yesterday, where the Timberwolves ended up completing the sweep and ending the game 122-116. Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, they did all they could, but it just wasn't enough for this team. Anthony Edwards, he ended the game with 40 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists. Karl-Anthony Towns ended with 28 and 10. Jaden McDaniels ended with 18 and 3. Mike Conley ended with 10 and 7. And that was all that was really needed for the scoring from the Timberwolves. The Phoenix Suns, Devin Booker ended with 49 points, but Kevin Durant ended with 33 points and 9 rebounds. So they were really good, and they were very efficient. Devin Booker shot 20 free throws. He shot 21 free throws and made 20 of them. But Bradley Beal, he was the one player that did not play very well in this game, and he shot 4 of 13 from the field. He said before this game that he's never gotten swept in his life, and he would be damned if that ever happened. And there's a first time for everything, and that's what happened. So it was really embarrassing how this Phoenix Suns team ended up playing about this season, because with how they were hyped up, it was like seen as a very strong super team because you had 3 players that could create a shot for themselves whenever they pleased. And it seemed like a repeat of Kevin Durant's days with the Brooklyn Nets. And again, with it being a repeat, it kind of also repeats the same success that the Brooklyn Nets have had in the postseason with Kevin Durant. Because this style of play is not easy to replicate in the playoffs. It's not really easy for teams to be able to do consistently in these postseasons, because these offenses are like relying on 2 or 3 players. Like, for example, if you're the Dallas Mavericks, who are basically doing the same thing, where it's like you have Luka or Kyrie with the ball and they're handling the offense, you have either 2 or 3 players in charge of controlling the offense. If they're not playing well, then there's no real, like, there's no other direction that you can take the team. So it's entirely dependent on either the 3 or the 2 players that are running the offense. And when you have, it sort of hinders your team, because it makes it a little bit easier to stop, because you sort of know exactly what to expect. And it makes it a little bit easier to defend, and that's sort of what the Timberwolves were able to exploit a lot in the series. Excuse me. But the Timberwolves, they forced Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal into a lot of contested mid-range shots, which are very difficult to hit consistently. And because of that, because they were forced into taking only those kind of shots, they just weren't able to get into a consistent rhythm up until the very last game. And obviously, like, you don't want to just play well in the very last game. And it's unfortunate that Bradley Beal couldn't step up in this game to help avoid the sweep. And this is a really bad look for Kevin Durant and his legacy as an NBA player, because the last 3 playoff series that he's been in, he's gotten swept twice in the first round, and he only got as far as the second round in one of those series. And then before that, he was only able to make it as far as the second round as well. So ever since Golden State, he hasn't really found that much success in the postseason, despite being one of the league's best players in the NBA. And he rarely gets scrutinized for it, given how we hold him to the status of being either top 2 or top, like, at one point when he was on Brooklyn, he was considered the best player in the NBA, and it was sort of unfortunate that he stepped on the line, ending Brooklyn's season. But ever since then, Kevin Durant hasn't really done much for the Nets. He hasn't done much for Phoenix, and he hasn't done much for an organization since Golden State. So I don't really know. And what makes this worse is, like, the amount of cap space that the Phoenix Suns have going into these future seasons, because now they traded away all of their picks just so they could get Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. So now they have to stick with this big 3 that didn't work the first year, and now they have to, like, expect that to work as these players get older. And as Bradley Beal, because Bradley Beal, if he continues to get older, then there's more chances that he's going to get injury prone, along with the rest of these players. So they're not really good on time with Kevin Durant, and they're not really good on time with Bradley Beal either. But that's all I really have to say for that game. But the other game that we were going to talk about is the Lakers going up against Denver. And an interesting stat over the series is that the Lakers have led a majority of the time in this series, over 100+ minutes, and the Denver Nuggets have only led about 40 minutes of this series, yet they're up 3-1 in this series. So this game, it started the same as every other game that the Lakers have played. The Lakers were up by a lot of points, and then Denver Nuggets were down at the half. Seemed like the Lakers were going to win it easily, but then the Denver Nuggets slowly crawled back in, and you almost thought that like it was going to happen again, because like it always happens that the Lakers they get this big lead over Denver, and it's been happening since Game 1, Game 2, and Game 3. They always get this big lead over Denver, and Denver just claws their way back in the game, and they end up winning it somehow. But in this game, that did not happen, as the Lakers ended up winning 119-108, and Anthony Davis ended the game with 25 points and 23 rebounds. Excuse me. LeBron James ended with 30 points and 5 rebounds and 4 assists. D'Angelo Russell ended with 21 points. Austin Reeves ended with 21 points. And Rui Hachimura ended with 9 points. Obviously, this was a great performance coming in from the Lakers. And with the Denver Nuggets losing this game, there is life for the Lakers right now going into this next game that's going to happen tonight, actually. So Jokic ended the game with 33 points, 14 rebounds, and 14 assists, but it wasn't enough against these Lakers. And Michael Porter Jr. ended the game with 27 points and 11 rebounds. Jamal Murray ended the game with 22 points and 6 rebounds and 5 assists. And he's also listed as questionable for this next game against the Lakers. So if he doesn't play against these Lakers in the next game, this might open the door for the Lakers to be able to make this comeback. Who knows what could happen, because LeBron James is still in the postseason, and he is still a very, very dangerous. He is still a threat to a lot of these players. Even though Denver isn't really afraid of them, they kind of should be, I feel like. Excuse me. Because this team, again, like LeBron in the postseason, is very very difficult to stop. And excuse me. My bad. But with LeBron in the postseason being so difficult to stop, it's really like this wouldn't be the first time that LeBron would have to overcome a huge or a deficit that has never been done before. So imagine if he does complete this 3-0 comeback. I wonder what the haters are going to say about LeBron then. But if that does happen, I am going to be rolling on Twitter, watching all of the doubters just go into shambles. But regardless, it's kind of insane how LeBron was able to win a playoff game before Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, even though Kevin Durant was he was on the better team, and they are relatively younger, and recently Golden State has seen more success than the Lakers. Like, as of recently, they won the championship a few years ago. So that's what I mean by recently. And excuse me. But regardless, with this team, it feels like they could, I just don't want to doubt LeBron, but I don't really think if they played like how they played in this game, then yes, they could win. But this is how they should have been playing in every single game. It's just they just weren't able to do that. I don't know if it was because of nerves or if it was for other reasons outside of basketball related reasons, but they just weren't doing what they needed to do. They weren't closing out these games, which Denver was able to take advantage of. So the Lakers, if they're able to close out these games, then they can definitely win this series without a doubt. But that's all I have for this playoff series and that other series. So with that, we are out of time, and I will go ahead and go into the second segment where I'm going to be talking about the Clippers, tying the series against the Mavericks, as well as the Magic tying the series against Cleveland. So I will be right back after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about the Dallas Mavericks and the Orlando Magic tying up their respective series to make it 2-2 as the Mavericks look to, as the Clippers look to play their next game at home, and the Magic look to play their next game away at Cleveland. So before I begin with this segment, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description or the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment to get your comments recognized and to tip or donate. Once again, the link is gsmcspodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. And let's go ahead and dive right in to this second segment where we talk about the Clippers being able to close out this game against the Dallas Mavericks. And the game started out as like a very dominant performance by the Clippers. They were just hitting shot after shot after shot, and they were blowing out the Dallas Mavericks early in the first quarter, 39-16. But as the Clippers do, they always end up the Clippers were up 31 points, and they somehow were able to blow that lead to the Dallas Mavericks behind Kyrie Irving's 40 points and Luka Doncic's 29-point triple-double, 29, 10, and 10. And Luka didn't really shoot the ball that well from three. He was 1 for 9, and he shot 10 for 24 from the field. But Kyrie, on the other hand, he was 14 for 25 and 6 of 12 from three. There was a stretch where he literally scored 12 straight points for the Dallas Mavericks, and the Clippers, they were just answering back three-pointer after three-pointer behind James Harden and Paul George. where they both ended the game with 33 points. James Harden ended with 7 assists. Paul George ended with 8. They also both ended with 6 rebounds. And James Harden, he shot 12 of 17 from the field. He was very efficient, 4 of 5 from 3. Paul George shot 11 for 19 from the field, 7 of 10 from 3. And they, again, both of these players were very efficient. Late in the game for the Clippers, James Harden ended up being the savior for them. He was just he was basically spamming floaters, and the Mavericks, they didn't really bother contesting him on a lot of the floaters that he was attempting. So they were really easy for him to just float the ball over everyone. And that's how they ended up winning this game. It was really surprisingly really bad defense on the Mavericks, who ended up wasting a dominant performance from Kyrie and a really good performance from Luka Doncic, when they really were expecting to hopefully take the series 3-1, and that way avoid the scenario of needing to go down 3-2 in the series, because now the Clippers, they play Game 5 at home. Also, it should be worth mentioning that the Clippers, they were able to do this without Kawhi Leonard in the rotation, and they haven't had Kawhi or Paul George healthy in a single postseason since 2020, and since then, they've gone farther without Kawhi Leonard in the postseason than they have gone with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George in the postseason. So that's a little food for thought, but I mean, it goes to show that even when Kawhi Leonard is out, the Clippers aren't really out. And there is a chance that they could end up winning this game out in 6, but I think this of all the series, that's probably I think this series is going to go to 7 games. All the series that are left right now, this one has the best chances of going to 7, because I could see the Clippers winning at home, and then I could see the Mavericks winning at home, and then playing that decisive Game 7 in LA. That would be a very, very nice matchup that I would really like to see. But let's just keep looking at the rest of the stats, if there's anything that's more important that needs to be said. I mean, Paul George and James Harden, they really sort of carried this team on the offensive side of the ball, and along with their 3-point shooting, they were able to hit a majority of the team's 3-pointers. So they shot, I believe, if I do the math properly, they shot 11 of the team's 18 3-pointers. And the team shot 62% from 3. So obviously, the team was very good at shooting the ball, and even with Kyrie Irving's 40-point performance, which again was completely wasted by the Dallas Mavericks, and Luka, in the press conference, he even said that he felt like he was letting Kyrie Irving down because of Kyrie's great performance going into this game, and if Luka shot the ball just a little bit better, they probably would have ended up winning, because there was a segment where Luka was just shooting bad shot after bad shot after bad shot from 3, and none of the shots were even close to going in, but he just kept throwing up the ball, and it was really bad to watch. But then Kyrie started doing it, and Kyrie started hitting. And he was sort of the catalyst for that team to make the comeback. Now, obviously, it wasn't enough, because James Harden and Paul George, they were able to provide enough scoring for the team to be able to win out in the end. But still, this team, it was really, really close. So now the series is tied 2-2, and they are expected to play at they're expected to play, I believe, they're expected to play Wednesday at 10 o'clock, and yep, they take a few days off before they move before they go back to Los Angeles and they play that next series. I don't know why it takes them that long. Like, I figured they would end up playing, like, at least on, not today, but maybe, like, tomorrow, but especially, like, since the Magic, like, they play tomorrow as well, so it only makes sense that you have both of those Game 5s to play on that day, but I guess, I mean, do the Clippers, no, yeah, I guess that makes sense. They still have the Heat series and the Celtics series. They're still, even though the Timberwolves will have a very long time to rest before their next series, which honestly, I think that puts them in the best advantage for these playoffs, because I mean, let's see, they're the 3rd seed, so depending on what team makes it out of the postseason, then that would be the team that plays either the Nuggets or the Timberwolves. So depending on what team makes it out is going to be dependent on whether or not the Timberwolves play the Nuggets or if they play a different team. Yeah, the seedings, they're still obviously, like, unknown because only one playoff series has been decided, but at least they don't have to worry about playing another game or, like, a few games afterwards and exhausting the rest of their players. So we can move on to the next game, the next game that I'm going to recap, which is the Magic tying up the series against Cleveland when they were at home. So far, Cleveland has yet to score 100 points in this entire series. But the Orlando Magic, they were able to do it in this game, and they won 112-89. So, excuse me, it really seems like all you got to do is score 100 points, and you end up beating Cleveland, because, like, again, Cleveland has yet to score 100 points in this entire playoff series, and Is it a problem with, like, the rest of the scorers? I mean, they're really scoring, but like they're scoring, it's just not enough, I guess you could say. Because it's like this team is, like, it's usually, like, accustomed to playing like it's typical, like, team basketball, but the production that these players are giving, they usually, like, they would have to hit a few more shots than they're hitting now in order to, like, win in these games, because Donovan Mitchell going 5 of 14 from the field is not going to help your team win in the playoffs at all. And Jarrett Allen, he was the leading scorer for this team. He ended up scoring 21 points, 8 for 11 from the field. And Darius Garland was 5 for 11 as well. He shot he had 14 points. So, rather impressive coming in from from Garland, but there needed to be a lot more production coming in from Donovan Mitchell if they wanted to even do something. And even then, with how badly the Cavs were shooting from 3, they shot 23% from 3, 4 for 17, and they also shot 47% from the field, while the Orlando Magic, they were able to shoot 12 for 26 from 3, and 55% from the field, 43 for 77. So they played much better in this game. They did not have Paolo Banchero scoring like how they did in the last game, where he shot 4 for 14 in this game and ended with 9 points. But Jalen Suggs, he ended the game with 12 points, 4 of 7 from the field. And Franz Wagner ended the game with 34 points and 13 of 17 from the field. So obviously, very good performance coming in from the Orlando Magic and their player in Franz Wagner, who's really stepped up in this role. So now they tie the series. They're 2-2, and now they're expected to go back to Cleveland and play Game 5 and see if they could win this game in Game 5. Then they could go into Game 6 and have home court advantage and play that elimination game so they could potentially win. But then there's also the possibility that they could lose in Game 5, but they still have that Game 6 where they could keep their season alive. So the way that the series has been going, it's really been going like whichever team's at home has been able to win. by a huge margin. Like, the last game that was played between the Magic and the Cavs, like, it started out close and competitive, but it really wasn't that close or competitive. Like, the final score was 121-83 for Game 3 of the playoff matchup. And again, in the last matchup that they played, the final score was 112-89. So there's a lot of scoring, and they're winning by a lot of points. And there's never really been a competitive game in the entirety of this series. Like, not a single game for either of the teams has been competitive. It's either been a blowout or, yes, it's literally been a blowout by the home team. And it might start out a little bit like close, but it doesn't end off close. And it's one of unfortunately, it makes it for one of the more boring series of the entire playoffs, because it's like whichever team is going to get the lead is going to be the team that ends up keeping it for the entirety of the game. Like, it started out close in the first quarter. But that was literally just about it. Then Cleveland ended up going up by a lot in the second quarter. But then in the second half, the Magic ended up destroying them completely, and there was really nothing that Cleveland could do to recover from that. It was a complete collapse from the Cavs, who ended up getting completely outplayed by the Orlando Magic and their players. But regardless, this team is looking to play the next game in Cleveland, and we'll see if Cleveland can actually score more than 100 points in this game, but I'm not entirely sure if that's going to happen. We'll also see if the Mavericks can, the Clippers can end up taking a 3-2 series lead over the Dallas Mavericks in this win that they desperately need. So, but I will be right back after this short break, and in the third segment, we are going to be talking about the Pacers and the Knicks as they go up 3-1 in their respective series. So I will be right back after this short break, and stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be talking about the Knicks going up 3-1 in their series against the Sixers, as well as the Pacers going up 3-1 in their series against the Milwaukee Bucks. So we'll start with the Bucks, who are right now in a little bit of a crisis, considering how in Game 3, this game I also was unable to cover because I did my Friday segment before this game even started, but Damian Lillard ended up getting injured in this game, which caused the Bucks to go into Game 4 without Damian Lillard and without Giannis Antetokounmpo. So it would seem that their hopes of winning this series are all but over. And a series that I thought was going to go to Game 7 ends up probably only going to be able to go to 5 games, because I really think that this Pacers team, like now that since the Pacers team are healthier than the Bucks team right now, they are just a much better team. And I had the Pacers making the series close with 7 games, and I had them winning, but I didn't really expect them to be able to win in 5. And it's really unlucky for the Bucks because of their injuries. However, having said that, I don't think that whether or not they were injured or not would have had much of an effect on this playoff series. I don't think that it would, because they lost. The Pacers, they won Game 3 in an overtime with where the final score was 121-118, and let's just look at the box scores for that game, so that way. Damian Lillard, he ended the game with 28 points. Again, he was injured. Again, he got injured later in the game. That's my bad. Portis ended the game with 17 and 18 rebounds. Middleton ended with 42 points and 10 rebounds, but it wasn't enough to stop these Pacers, who ended up having Tyrese Halliburton drop a triple-double, 18 points, 10 rebounds, and 16 assists. Miles Turner had 29 points and 9 rebounds. Pascal Siakam had 17 points and 9 rebounds. And Andrew Nembhard had 16 points. And Obi Toppin also ended the game with 15 points. And the Pacers were able to come out with the win. They shot way more shots than the Bucks. And because of the amount of shot attempts, they took almost 20 more shot attempts than the entire Bucks did. And when you take that many more shots, you're obviously going to have a better chance of making more shots than the other team, and that's sort of been the difference maker for the Pacers when they were matched up against the Bucks in that specific matchup. Now, excuse me. Obviously, when you're if you're the Pacers, this was a very good win, because now this moves the series to 2-1, and they ended up playing the next game at home yesterday against the Bucks, again without Damian Lillard and without Giannis Antetokounmpo. And the Bucks, they couldn't win without those two stars in their lineup, and the Pacers ended up winning 126-113. And Middleton ended the game 25 and 10. Brook Lopez ended with 27 and 9. Malik Beasley ended the game with 20, and Beverly ended with 9. That was basically all that came in from the Bucks in terms of scoring. And the Pacers, Pascal Siakam, he sort of slowed down a little bit from his first few games against the Bucks. He ended the game with 13 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. And Miles Turner ended the game with 29 points. Halliburton ended the game with 24 points and 4 rebounds and 4 assists. And Obi Toppin ended the game with 13 points. And the Pacers shot much more efficiently in this game than they did in the previous game. They took just as many shots as the Bucks did. Well, almost just as many. They were just one shot away from tying them in shot attempts. They did tie them in shot makes from the field. The Bucks shot 51.1% from the field, for making 46 shots, and the Pacers also made 46 shots, but they shot 51.7% from the field. So it was that one shot difference that really made that really changed like the entire it was that one shot that affected the field goal difference between the Bucks and the Pacers. But why was the score so spread out? Well, it was because the Pacers were able to make a lot more threes than the Bucks in this game. So the Bucks, they shot 12 of 33 from 3, and that was 36%, so not too bad. But the Pacers, they shot 22 for 43%, not 43, but 22 for 43 from 3, and that was 51.2% from 3. So obviously that was a very close, not a very close game coming in from the Pacers, and like the Bucks ended up losing this game 126-113, and they desperately needed Giannis to win this game, but unfortunately he was unavailable for the Bucks, and because he was unavailable for the Bucks and because Dame is now injured, I really don't see the Bucks being able to win out the rest of this series, as well as being able to even win the rest of the postseason. Now, for the next game, which is the Knicks and the Sixers, the Knicks end up winning 97-92 after Joel Embiid scored his 50-point game against the Knicks in the previous matchup. He ends up scoring 27 points in this next matchup with 10 rebounds, and Tyrese Maxey ended the game with 23 points and 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Kelly Oubre ended with 19 points. And let's see, the Knicks right here, the only real player that was really like scoring that well for the team was Jalen Brunson, who ended the game with 47 points, 10 assists, and 4 rebounds. OG Anunoby ended the game with 18 points and 14 rebounds, and 16 points, and 14 rebounds. And the team, those players played a lot of minutes. Josh Hart only had 4 points, but was able to get 17 rebounds in this game. He shot 0 for 7 from the field, and Precious shot 0 for 5 from field, but it was all right considering how the Sixers just weren't able to really sort of function as the game continued. The matchup throughout the entire game it seemed like Philly was going to Philly started out coming out on top. Then the Knicks started to even the score. Then the scoring was relatively close in the third quarter, and it was also relatively close in the fourth quarter, but the Knicks were able to prevail and were able to win by 5 points. Luckily, because of partly because of Jalen Brunson's 47-point game. Without that 47-point game, this Knicks team probably wouldn't be anywhere, which is honestly a little bit of a problem for this team, because I feel like with this scoring, all this heavy scoring from Jalen, if you stop Jalen, then you essentially stop the Knicks, and that's really it's really alarming when it's like that's basically the only offense that this Knicks can really give you in the postseason. And this might be because Julius Randle isn't in the rotation anymore, and because of his injury. But regardless, the fact that you need a dominant performance like this from Jalen Brunson in order to win is a little bit concerning going deeper into the postseason. But a win is a win, and I'm not going to take that away from the Knicks, because now they're up 3-1 in the series. Now they play this next Game 5 at home, the perfect opportunity to close out the series and completely do away with the Sixers, so they don't have to worry about playing them again, and they could rest some of their players, because I believe, the rest of the teams in the Eastern Conference are still playing some playoff games, and let's see. So the next Eastern Conference playoff game is going to be the Celtics going up against the Heat. They're the last team in terms of because right now they're the only team that hasn't played either 4 games or 3 games. Like, they're going to play their 3rd game in today at 7:30 against I lied. They're going to play their 4th game. They haven't played their 4th game yet. That's my bad. The series is 2-1 right now for Boston, and it looks like right now the Sixers and the Knicks game could be the first Eastern Conference matchup that ends. And if that's the case, then the Pacers are looking like they're going to end up winning their series as well, which means that the Knicks aren't going to go up against the Pacers, because most likely the Boston Celtics are going to win out their series, which will then force the Celtics to play the Pacers because they are the higher seed, so the higher seed has to play the lower seed. But that's sort of like what's being expected of for both the Pacers and the Knicks looking into looking into the postseason. And again, it really seems like New York is just going to dominate entirely, and I really hope that this team makes it out of this first round and ends up going into the second round. But with that, we are out of time for this 3rd segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the 4th segment, where I talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder and their series, as well as the Celtics and their series. So I will be right back after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Bit of a longer than normal break. I apologize for that. It's mainly because there was someone else that needed to talk to me outside of the room, so I had to get that situation settled with. But now that we got that out of the way, we can go into the final two games of this sort of playoff recap, which are the Heat and the Thunder. So, the Heat and, the Heat going up against the Celtics, that playoff series is sort of like in the same pace as the Thunder going up against the Pelicans. It was one of the last series to start in the postseason, and therefore it's going to be like probably the last series to end by the looks of it. If you're the, depending on how the series is obviously like played out, because the right now the Thunder are looking to end this series as quickly as possible, and they ended up going into this game with a 2-0 lead, and they come out of New Orleans 3-0, and the final score being 85-106, and yes, the Thunder, they have a chance to close out their hiccups. The Thunder have a chance to close out their series tonight against the Pelicans, since now the series is 3-0. And like I said, they won 106-85. The Thunder, their scorers were Lou Dort, 12 points, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 24, Jalen Williams, 21, and Chet did not really play well. He ended with 6, and that was essentially like all the scoring that was really needed coming in from the Thunder. The Pelicans, they Brandon Ingram, he ended with 19 points, so they really needed more production from him. CJ McCollum ended with 16 points on 7 for 22 from the field. Obviously, this is really, really bad shooting from CJ McCollum, and if he was shooting a little bit better in this particular playoff series, then I think it would look a little bit more different than how it's been looking. And, Jesus Christ, 7 for 22 from the field, that is really, really bad for, that's really bad for anyone, honestly. And Brandon Ingram, he ended up, like I said, 19 points, but 7 of 14 from the field. And obviously, when you're someone that's that valuable for to the offense as Brandon Ingram, you need to have a lot more production in order to sort of prevail in this game, which is why they really, really need Zion. And the fact that they don't have Zion in this series proves that they literally just cannot win without Zion. And it obviously makes sense. Of course, they don't have their best player. What else do you expect from a team not having their best player? It makes sense that they're not able to win. But like, it's not like they don't have good enough players to be able to produce something for the team and sort of make the series last a little bit longer than 4 games. Like, Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum, they're both really good options, and they both developed into relatively good players. And if they've just played better, they could definitely, like, win in this series, but it's just they didn't. Now, Shai Gilgeous, he did not shoot the ball that well in this game, 8 for 20, but it didn't really matter because they ended up winning. Now, Jalen Williams, he shot 9 of 16 from the field for 21 points, 3 of 4 from 3. Very impressive. Lou Dort, 4 of 9 from the field and 4 of 8 from 3, which is 12 points. And obviously, like, they shot really well from the field. They shot really well from 3. They shot much better from 3 than the Pelicans. Pelicans shot 9 for 32 from 3, which is 28%. And the Thunder shot 17 of 36 from 3, which is 47%, and 48% from the field, compared to the Pelicans, who shot 38% from the field. So, obviously, this team they just played a lot better than their opposition. And now we move on to the next game that's going to happen, which is going to be the Celtics going up against the Miami Heat. Right now, the Celtics are up 2-1 against the Heat. It was shocking that the Heat were able to win one game in Boston, but that was a little bit of a crazy win, seeing as how they needed to shoot and hit a lot of three-pointers to get there. Now, the Celtics, they ended up winning this game 104-84. Jason Tatum had 22 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists. Drew Holiday only had 3 points in this game. And Jaylen Brown had 22 points. Derek White had 16. Porzingis had 18. And that was really, like, all the scoring that was needed for this team. Drew Holiday was 1 for 5 from the field, but his lack of production wasn't really needed. Like, it didn't really matter for this team that he didn't really produce, because the Miami Heat, they don't have Jimmy Butler, and because they don't have Jimmy Butler, it's like they're sort of they're in a really bad situation now, because Jimmy is usually like the guy that keeps them in games long enough so they're able to win it in the end. And now that they don't have that, it's like they're sort of stuck in this postseason, and they were able to win one game, but I think that was sort of fluky. Now, Bam ended the game with 20 points. Nikola Jovic ended the game with 15. And Jamie Jaquez Jr. ended the game with 12. Tyler Hero ended with 15. And Caleb Martin ended the game with 5. And obviously, that's not enough. That's not good enough scoring if you're the Miami Heat. And compared to the last game where they shot very well from 3, where I'm just going to read off the box scores of the last game. They shot 53% from 3, 23 for 43 from 3, and they ended up going into this game and they shot just looking at the box scores, 9 for 28 from 3, which is a major step back from what they were able to do in game 2. And obviously, like, when you shoot that bad, which is 32% from 3, it's really difficult to win. The Celtics, they did not shoot that well from 3 either, but they were able to make up for it with their field goal percentage, which was 47.6, and they ended up hitting a lot more 2-pointers than they ended up hitting 3-pointers compared to the Heat. Because the Miami Heat, the Celtics, they made more threes than the Heat, like, compared to the Heat made 9, the Celtics made 11, but the Celtics, they shot a little bit worse compared to the Miami Heat, because they shot the ball way more. They had more possessions than the Heat, and because of that, it played into the field goal percentage, despite the fact that the Celtics ended up hitting more threes than the Miami Heat. And I've said previously that when you hit more threes than another team, it's a little bit more difficult to beat. And when you're the Celtics getting a lot more possessions than the Miami Heat, that's also a little bit more difficult to beat. So that's that's basically the rundown of all the games that happened over the weekend. So the Suns are the only team that have been eliminated from the playoffs. They've been swept. They are also the only team that has been swept so far. And now we look into the next round we look into the next round for the Timberwolves to see who they play. And we still have a few more games in the first round to see who keeps advancing. So the Lakers are going to play the Nuggets tonight at 10. We're going to see if the Lakers can keep their season alive and maybe force a Game 6 after playing this Game 5. We'll see again. I'm not entirely sure. The Celtics, they play at 7:30 against the Miami Heat, and we will see if the Celtics are able to make this series 3-1 going into Boston in Game 5. And then for the Thunder, we look to see if they can close out this series in 4 games, making it the second sweep of the postseason. And then there's obviously more series to keep going. The next team that looks to get eliminated is obviously the Lakers, but other than that, the Pacers look to eliminate the Bucks in their very next game. And the Sixers look to get eliminated. Well, the Knicks look to eliminate the Sixers in their next game tomorrow. But the Magic and the Cavs series looks to be going on a little bit longer. Same with the Mavs and the Clippers series. So we'll see exactly where the teams are going to stand just after Game 5. But that's basically the update on all the playoffs and all the scenarios that have been going on. And that's basically it for the show. Thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And we also would like to remind you to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, as well as, it's the same link as displayed below the ticker on every show segment. It is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. And once again, that is the end of the show segment. Thank you all once again. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the